Day 57, no arrest, no confirmed location. And this morning, a woman's body pulled from an Arizona canal, a sheriff being called out by his own predecessor for destroying the integrity of a crime scene. A deputy from the same department now behind bars on kidnapping charges. And Savannah Guthrie sobbing on national television, saying the words that no daughter should ever have to say.
I'm so sorry, Mommy. If it is me, I'm so sorry.
If you are new to the True Crime Report, subscribe right now, because what is happening in this case today, March 29th, 2026, is unlike anything we have covered before, and you need to hear all of it. Let's start with the development that landed hardest this week. Not a DNA result, not a tip, not a ransom demand. A daughter breaking down on camera and blaming herself. Savannah Guthrie sat down with her longtime friend and Today Show colleague Hoda Kotb for a two-part interview that aired March 26th and 27th. Her first on-camera appearance since her 84-year-old mother, Nancy, was taken from her Tucson, Arizona home in the early hours of February 1st. The interview covered a lot of ground, but it was one particular thread that stopped the country cold. Savannah told Kotb she believes there is a real possibility her mother was targeted as a way to extract money because of her own fame and wealth. Her brother Cameron, a former military fighter pilot and intelligence professional, was the first person in the family to reach that conclusion. When Savannah called him, even over the phone, he knew. He said, "I think she's been kidnapped for ransom." What followed was the moment that shattered everyone watching. Savannah broke down as she said it was too much to bear to think that she may have brought this to her mother's door, that it happened because of her. She apologized directly to her mother, to her siblings, to everyone in her family, saying if it is because of her, she is deeply sorry. Her Today Show colleagues sitting at the anchor desk after the interview aired were visibly affected. Craig Melvin pointed out that Savannah had nothing to apologize for, that it was some unknown individual or individuals who kidnapped an elderly woman in the middle of the night. But guilt does not wait for logic. And Savannah Guthrie, by every account, is carrying a weight that no amount of on-air solidarity can lift. There is something else from that interview that deserves careful attention. Savannah described a moment of profound spiritual clarity in the weeks after her mother disappeared. She said that early in the ordeal, she felt she heard God speak to her directly, telling her that Nancy was with him, that whether Nancy was still on this earth or in heaven, Savannah knew where she was and who she was with. That is a statement from a woman of deep, documented faith. It is also a statement that many investigators and analysts following this case have quietly noted, because it suggests Savannah Guthrie, at least on a spiritual level, may have already begun to reckon with the possibility that her mother is no longer alive. She has not said that publicly in those terms, but the words she is choosing and the ones she is not choosing are telling a story of their own. Now to the development that is generating the most urgent conversation today, and it requires both context and a clear label before we go further. This morning, Saturday, March 29th, a woman's body was recovered from a canal in Scottsdale, Arizona. Emergency crews were called to the area near Hayden and Indian Bend roads, close to the Scottsdale Silverado Golf Club, around 8 a.m. after a passerby spotted the body in the water and called 911. First responders worked alongside the Salt River Project and the Central Arizona Project to recover the remains. Detectives confirmed the victim is an adult woman. Because of the body's condition, they were unable to immediately determine whether there were visible signs of trauma. The Maricopa County Office of the Medical Examiner is now working to identify the woman and establish cause of death. The internet moved fast. Within hours, speculation was flooding social media, connecting this discovery to Nancy Guthrie. Scottsdale is approximately 117 miles from Tucson. That distance matters. Scottsdale police said the woman's body pulled from the canal Saturday has no apparent connection to the Nancy Guthrie case. Full stop on that. Authorities have drawn a clear line. There is no confirmed connection. The Maricopa County Medical Examiner's identification process is ongoing, and until a name and circumstances are established, this is a separate investigation being handled independently. What is worth noting, however, is the psychological texture of this moment. This is not the first time a body found in Arizona has sent this case community into a spiral. In early March, a woman named Alex Fleming, 42, was found near a Phoenix canal. Online speculation immediately connected that discovery to the Guthrie case, but authorities confirmed she was unrelated. The age and circumstances ruled it out quickly. 2 false alarms in under a month. Each one a reminder of how desperately people want resolution to this case. And each one a reminder of how much pain and unresolved disappearance spreads outward, far beyond the immediate family. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She was taken without her medication, without shoes, in her pajamas. Every day that passes tightens the window of realistic hope. That reality weighs on everyone following this case, and it is why each new discovery in Arizona commands the kind of immediate, fearful attention that no other missing persons case is currently generating. There is a man at the center of this investigation who, as of this weekend, is under siege from multiple directions simultaneously, and his name is Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. The criticism has BGK building for weeks. But what happened this past Friday on News Nation elevated it. GDK Richard Carmona, a former United's GDK Surgeon General and a man whose DDK decades in the Pima County Sheriff's Department, including commanding its SWAT team, appeared on Brian Enton Investigates and delivered what many are calling the most devastating public rebuke of Nanos yet. Carmona's central claim was direct and unsparing. The investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance has been irreversibly damaged. Once it has BGK corrupted, that's the end of it, he said. You cannot reconstitute a crime scene. What was he referring to specifically? The moment Sheriff Nanos personally went on television and announced that the crime scene at Nancy Guthrie's Catalina Foothills home was being reopened? Carmona explained that a sheriff simply does not make that call. It is the lead detective at the scene who determines when all evidence has been properly documented, collected, and secured, and only then gives the clearance to open an area. Nanos did it publicly, on camera, unilaterally. Carmona also highlighted a now infamous incident in which a Domino's pizza delivery driver, fulfilling an order placed by a viewer for an independent journalist at the scene, walked across Nancy Guthrie's front lawn and up to the front door during an active investigation, while deputies on scene did nothing to intervene. His point was direct. A defense attorney can use that moment to argue the crime scene was corrupted, that any evidence collected there is tainted, that the chain of custody has been broken. If you're going to court and you're making a case, a defense attorney says, that crime scene was corrupted. You had people delivering pizzas, Carmona said. How do we know this is real evidence? He did not stop there. Carmona also questioned the decision to send physical evidence to a private laboratory in Florida rather than to the FBI's forensic lab in Quantico, Virginia. He noted that the FBI does not charge local agencies for forensic services. Federal tax dollars already cover it. Nanos reportedly cited cost as a factor in choosing the private lab. Carmona added the public has to have trust in its law enforcement agency. You cannot lead without trust. And when you have a sheriff that has to keep correcting himself and changing his story every day, the public loses faith in you. This is not anonymous criticism. This is the nation's 17th Surgeon General, a man who spent 34 years inside the very department he is now condemning, saying publicly what many inside Pima County have been saying privately for weeks. The Pima County Deputies Union has already delivered a unanimous no confidence vote. Sergeant Eric Cross, president of the deputies organization, announced the result without ambiguity. The verdict was unanimous, no confidence. He has lost the faith of his community, his deputies, and his community. A recall effort is underway. The Pima County Board of Supervisors has been formally pressured to act. And Nanos, for his part, told a local television station he has no regrets about his team's handling of the case. While the sheriff faces political and professional collapse, the department he leads is simultaneously dealing with a scandal that has nothing directly to do with Nancy Guthrie, but which landed in the worst possible week at the worst possible time. On March 27th, a 22-year-old Pima County Sheriff's deputy named Travis Reynolds was arrested by the Tucson Police Department and charged with 1 count of kidnapping. He was fired the same day. Reynolds appeared in a Pima County courtroom after being taken into custody. A judge set bond at $200,000, ordered him to have no contact with the alleged victim, and barred him from possessing weapons. His next court date, a preliminary hearing, is scheduled for April 6. What are the allegations? According to court documents and verified reporting, Reynolds was transporting a female detainee to Pima County Jail when the incident allegedly began. Prosecutors said the alleged victim told authorities she was afraid of Reynolds because of the power dynamic between them. He was uniformed. She was handcuffed. He allegedly made inappropriate remarks about her appearance, shared a vape pen with her, and told her he could help with her case if they went to a hotel together. Investigators say Reynolds allegedly showed the woman explicit videos on his phone and delayed taking her into the jail. After she exited the vehicle, he allegedly directed her to expose herself before eventually bringing her inside. When confronted by investigators, Reynolds offered what prosecutors described as something short of a denial. He told them he may or may not have shown explicit material or discussed sex with the detainee. Prosecutors at his initial appearance called the allegations very, very concerning, citing the extreme imbalance of power between an armed, uniformed officer and a restrained detainee. The online speculation connecting Reynolds to the Nancy Guthrie case was immediate and widespread. Some accounts compared his appearance to the masked figure visible in doorbell camera footage from Nancy's home. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer addressed those comparisons directly and firmly. She dismissed any link between Reynolds and the Guthrie case, concluding that she does not believe Reynolds is the suspect seen on the camera footage outside Nancy's home. Authorities have drawn a clear line. Reynolds' arrest is unrelated to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. The two cases involve separate alleged conduct, separate investigations, and no confirmed overlap. But here is the institutional reality that cannot be wished away. The same department that failed to secure Nancy Guthrie's crime scene, that allowed a pizza delivery driver onto an active crime scene, that has been hit with a unanimous no confidence vote, that is now facing a recall effort against its sheriff, that same department just had one of its own deputies arrested and charged with kidnapping a woman in his custody. A criminal defense attorney who analyzed the Guthrie investigation noted that it is becoming increasingly evident that Nanos has had inconsistent messaging and made missteps, failures, and untimely responses. Yet he is still not letting go of this investigation. The institution is fractured. The question that analysts are sitting with right now is whether the investigation can survive the institution. Pull back from the politics for a moment. Pull back from the sheriff. Pull back from the deputy. And look at what the evidence actually shows. Because underneath all the institutional noise, there are forensic threads that still represent real hope. The Pima County Sheriff's Department sent physical evidence from Nancy Guthrie's home to DNA Labs International, a private forensic laboratory in Deerfield Beach, Florida. The sheriff cited cost. Dr. Carmona questioned the decision. But the lab itself has an elite reputation among forensic professionals. And according to investigative journalist Ashley Banfield, who has maintained active sources inside the Guthrie investigation since day one, the lab has agreed to perform a rush analysis using technology that was not scheduled for public deployment until next year. What are investigators working with? According to Banfield's sources, a partial DNA sample of male DNA was found inside Nancy Guthrie's home. Critically, it does not match anyone in Nancy's known circle. It is an unknown male contributor. That matters. And to understand why, you need to understand something about what complex mixture actually means in modern DNA science. CeCe Moore, head of Parabon Nanolabs and one of the country's leading investigators in genetic genealogy, has explained the challenge in terms that cut through the technical language. A mixed DNA sample becomes increasingly difficult to analyze as the number of contributors increases. 2 contributors, where the suspected perpetrator represents the majority of the sample, is manageable for most labs. 3 or more contributors with no single person dominating is where the field has historically hit its ceiling. At Parabon, Moore has noted, analysts can work with suspect contributions as low as 40%. Already ahead of most labs in the country. But if the unknown male in the Guthrie sample represents a smaller fraction of a complex multi-contributor mixture, perhaps from a surface that Nancy's family members, visitors, or maintenance workers have touched repeatedly, the analysis becomes exponentially harder. The new technology being applied at DNA Labs International, according to Banfield sources, is believed to target exactly this problem: mixture deconvolution, the ability to mathematically separate individual DNA profiles from within a layered multi-person sample. If it works, if the suspect's genetic signature can be isolated from the noise around it, then investigative genetic genealogy becomes possible. That means uploading the profile to public databases, finding relatives, walking back a family tree. The same methodology that identified the Golden State Killer. The same methodology that led investigators to Brian Kohberger in the Idaho student murder case. There is also one other forensic possibility that has received almost no mainstream coverage in this case: a rootless hair. The suspect, visible in the Nest camera footage, appears to have facial hair, something along the jaw, possibly a goatee. He was wearing a ski-style mask. Those masks are not surgical. They rub against facial hair. They create friction. They loosen hairs. Dr. Ed Green at UC Santa Cruz developed a method, now proven in multiple real-world cases, to extract a full SNP genetic profile from a rootless hair. A beard hair, a mustache hair, hair that in the past would have been collected, labeled, and contributed nothing. Now it can be enough to build a profile, run a genealogy search, and find a name. If one hair fell from that mask inside Nancy Guthrie's home, near her bed, in the front foyer, along the blood trail, it could be the thing that breaks this case wide open. The question is whether crime scene investigators found it and whether they knew to look. That last question lands with uncomfortable weight when you consider what Dr. Carmona and multiple investigative journalists have documented about the early handling of this crime scene. The camera mount bracket, the one the suspect is visibly seen grabbing, twisting, and wrenching in the footage, remained on the outside wall of Nancy Guthrie's home for approximately 2 to 3 weeks before it was removed and collected as evidence. The doormat at the front entrance reportedly was never taken into evidence at all. Glass fragments seen below the Nest camera mount by Fox News correspondent Michael Ruiz in the early days of the investigation, fragments that, if the suspect was carrying a bite light in his mouth and leaning forward to tamper with the camera, could contain saliva, were apparently not collected. Forensic experts who have reviewed this case publicly have noted that the exterior of the front entrance, the mount, the fragments, the mat, the concrete below, represented some of the highest probability locations for the suspect's DNA. Saliva, skin cells transferred from gloves that had touched his face, a hair shaken loose during the physical effort of wrenching the camera. All of it was left exposed. Reporters walked past it. Flower deliveries arrived. A pizza driver crossed the lawn. Deputies stood there and watched. Investigators were also criticized for reportedly overlooking a roof-mounted camera during their initial inspection and for failing to deploy a thermal imaging search plane for 3 hours after Nancy was reported missing, reportedly because Sheriff Nanos had reassigned the only deputy qualified to operate it to street patrol following a personal conflict. In a kidnapping case, 3 hours is not a delay. It is a different investigation entirely. Thermal imaging in the early hours could have tracked body heat across the desert terrain surrounding the Catalina foothills. It could have identified a vehicle. It could have narrowed a search radius when the trail was still warm. None of that happened. Carmona, who was careful to note he has no insider access to the active investigation, made a point that cut to the core of the institutional problem. The fact that we arrive at this point where we have to ask, is there a collegial relationship between these agencies? Right there tells me there's a problem. The FBI has resources that Pima County cannot match. Google engineers worked alongside FBI analysts to attempt recovery of deleted footage from the Ring and Nest cameras. CBS News correspondent Anna Schechter has confirmed that investigators do not believe additional footage can be recovered. That avenue is closed. What is not closed? The DNA lab in Florida, the tip line. And the possibility, still real, still alive, according to law enforcement sources, that someone who knows something about what happened to Nancy Guthrie decides that the weight of that knowledge has become unbearable. Here is the emotional center of this entire story, and it is not a forensic detail. It is a woman standing in front of millions of Americans and refusing to look away. Savannah Guthrie has said she wakes up every single night in the dark and thinks about her mother's terror. She imagines what Nancy saw standing over her bed in the middle of the night. She imagines what it felt like to be taken barefoot, in pajamas, bleeding, with no shoes, no phone, no medicine. She told Hoda Kotb she is in agony, that her whole family is in agony, that it is unbearable, and that she will not hide her face. She said someone needs to do the right thing. She has said that more than once, in more than one forum, in more than one way. It is not a slogan. It is a plea addressed to a specific person or specific people who she believes are out there carrying knowledge that could bring this to an end. The Guthrie family released a statement on March 21st asking the community for renewed attention, saying no detail is too small. They continue to offer a $1 million reward for information leading to Nancy's safe recovery. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has a serious heart condition. She has a pacemaker. She walks with a cane. She takes daily medication that she did not have with her when she was taken. Every day that passes carries its own brutal arithmetic. The case has not stayed local. As the search entered its 8th week, coverage of the Guthrie disappearance has spotlighted thousands of missing persons cases across the United States, cases that have been quietly unsolved, underreported, and under-resourced long before this one drew national cameras. Families who have been waiting years for the kind of investigative attention the Guthrie case commands have used this moment to push their own stories back into the light. That is Nancy's unintended legacy in this interim moment. Still missing, still searched for, still prayed for, but also serving as a mirror held up to a system that has long failed the families of missing Americans who do not have a network anchor as a daughter, a $1 million reward fund, or a national spotlight aimed at their front door. Step back even further and consider what this case is actually revealing about the machinery of a criminal investigation in America. Not the ideal version, not the television version, but the real one. Sheriff Chris Nanos has presided over nearly 2 months of failed momentum. His deputies voted unanimously against him. A recall effort is underway. A $1.3 million lawsuit has reportedly been filed against him. And what has emerged about his background? A disciplinary record from his time at the El Paso Police Department that reportedly included 8 suspensions and 37 days of docked pay for misconduct, including excessive force, raises questions questions about how he reached the position he currently holds. The union statement described his record as raising serious concerns about leadership fitness, warning that effective policing was impossible under a commander with such a history of repeated disciplinary problems. Against that backdrop, the decision to send evidence to a private Florida lab rather than the FBI lab in Quantico reads differently. The decision to personally announce the reopening of the crime scene on television reads differently. The decision that left the camera mount exposed for weeks reads differently. This is not a case of one bad call. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Hamilton has noted the lack of personalization in the ransom notes that have been made public, pointing out that a truly credible kidnapper would include details that are not accessible from public sources. Former FBI veteran Moran O'Connell has noted that standard FBI protocol in a kidnapping without confirmed proof of life is to withhold payment, and that the Guthrie family's decision not to pay likely reflected that guidance. The suspect himself, the masked figure captured on camera approaching Nancy's front door, made calculated choices. He removed the cameras. He appears to have used a bite light. He wore gloves. He entered through the back, where sources confirm Nancy rarely locked her doors, and exited through the front, where the blood trail runs from the foyer to the driveway. Analysts suggest he had conducted surveillance of the property. A neighbor reported seeing a suspicious man near the home on January 11th, weeks before the abduction, and investigators have reportedly designated that date as a key point of focus. This was not impulsive. Someone studied this. Someone chose Nancy Guthrie specifically. And investigators believe, based on the ransom notes demanding Bitcoin, based on the choice of target, based on the pre-abduction surveillance, that the motive was financial, tied directly to Savannah Guthrie's public profile and presumed wealth. A demand for $4 million in Bitcoin, escalating to $6 million. Not a random number, a calculated one, chosen by someone who understood both cryptocurrency and the family's perceived resources. And yet, no arrest. 57 days in. Here is where everything stands as of Sunday, March 29th, 2026. A woman's body was recovered this morning from a Scottsdale canal. Authorities say there is no apparent connection to Nancy Guthrie. The Maricopa County medical examiner is working to confirm identification and cause of death. A private DNA lab in Deerfield Beach, Florida, is processing what investigators believe is an unknown male DNA sample from inside Nancy's home. The lab is reportedly using next-generation mixture deconvolution technology that may allow analysts to isolate the suspect's genetic profile from a complex multi-contributor sample. If successful, investigative genetic genealogy could provide a name. A former Pima County Sheriff, Dr. Richard Carmona, the nation's 17th Surgeon General, has stated publicly and without equivocation that the crime scene was corrupted, that the damage may be permanent, and that the current sheriff has destroyed the public trust that effective law enforcement requires. A Pima County deputy, Travis Reynolds, was arrested and fired this week on a separate kidnapping charge. No connection to the Guthrie case has been confirmed by authorities. And Savannah Guthrie, returning to the Today Show anchor chair on April 6th, right after Easter, is a woman who sat in front of her country this week and apologized to her mother for existing in a way that may have made her a target. None of those threads have resolved. All of them are still live. If you know anything at all about what happened to Nancy Guthrie, the FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The family's $1 million reward remains active. The Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line is 520-351-4900. This video took hours of research, cross-referencing multiple sources and original analysis to put together. If it gave you something you could not find anywhere else today, share it with someone who is following this case. Leave a like. It takes 1 second, and it helps this coverage reach people who need to see it. And if you are not yet subscribed to the True Crime Report, today is the day. We follow cases until they break. We do not disappear when the news cycle moves on. Neither will we here. Nancy Guthrie was taken 57 days ago. Her family is still waiting. Her country is still watching. I am Sandra. This is the True Crime Report. Thank you for watching.